Hey guys, how's it going? So today I'm going to be reviewing a game called Tokyo Xtreme Racer for the Sega Dreamcast. Now I have mentioned before on this channel that this is part of my favorite racing game series of all time. I absolutely love the Tokyo Xtreme Racer series and I think that they are incredibly underrated. And my very first introduction to this amazing game series was through this one, the very first Tokyo Xtreme Racer that showed up on September 9th, 1999 for the Sega Dreamcast. So I'm sure it's pretty obvious by now that I got a lot of things to say about this game, but remember, as before in my previous Soul Calibur review, I'm going to be a lot more critical in these reviews, and you can see that as amazing as Soul Calibur was, it only barely just got the Golden Seal of approval. So let's see how this game fares in terms of my grading system. So the very first category that I'm going to be going over is the story. Now, this game has a very interesting premise because it puts you, the player of this game, as being the main character of the story. And your goal is to try to race against all of these street gangs that show up in the Shuto Expressway in Tokyo in the middle of the night. And you try to do this by buying the most exotic Japanese sports car that you can afford and tuning it to the best of your ability, so that you can race and have a chance of beating these rival gangs. And it's actually a very cool premise. The only problem is that you're really told this story through the instruction manual of this game and through like a brief panel that shows up at the beginning of the game. That's really all they show you in terms of the story, and in order for a game to do extremely well in this category for me, it has to present its story similar to like The Last of Us, where it has to have all these full-blown cutscenes, and it has to have like very interesting and coherent dialogue that goes along with it. Unfortunately, Tokyo Xtreme Racer does not have anything like that, and for that I'm probably gonna have to give this game a 12 out of 20 in the story category. But don't worry about it yet, guys, because where this game lacks in its story section, it more than makes up for it in the gameplay section. So the controls of this game is very simple, where you use the analog stick to control the steering of your car, you use the right trigger to accelerate it, and you use the left trigger to decelerate your car. Two other buttons that I would absolutely recommend that you know in order to play this game is that the Y button controls your camera, and then your B button actually allows your car to flash its lights, which that does sound pretty useless, but it's actually very useful because it is used to signal to the other enemy cars that you want to race with them. The controls of this game is very quick and responsive. I quite like it. And one more thing I have to say is that make sure that you have a jump pack put into the second VMU port of your Dreamcast controller, because this game has the coolest vibration that I have ever felt. Because the vibration, the rate that it vibrates, it depends on how fast your car is going. So like, let's say you're pulling like 60 miles per hour, it doesn't really like vibrate that much. But if you pull it all the way down to perhaps something like 200 miles per hour, wow, this thing vibrates like crazy, which is awesome. But yeah, as I was mentioning before, this game controls like a dream. I absolutely love the way this game handles. The only problem I have is it's not actually with the controls, but it's more like with this game's physics. So like whenever you crash into things, it's not quite realistic, like Burnout or something like that, where your car just breaks into 1,000 pieces. Your car does like this weird hopping like motion whenever it smacks around corners. And well, it's actually not a point that I'm gonna complain too much, but because it's actually very useful in the races, because whenever your car does this hopping motion, if you know how to handle it correctly, it can actually really help you in the races, because whenever your car hops like that, it will reorient itself in the, like along the curve, which makes it, like allow for you to go, like drive into the curves at a high speed, which is pretty awesome. But it does look very weird though. But with that aside, this game controls very well. Now, I have described this game in the past as a fighting racing game, and I have actually a very good reason for that. Because when you head against other rivals, there are two life bars that appear at the top of the screen. Kinda like a fighting game, isn't it? So yeah, you got these two life bars, one's for you, one's for the opponent. And the way it works is that if you're ahead of the opponent, their life bar will drain. But the opposite is true. If the opponent is ahead of you, your life bar will drain. So it's basically a very exciting and exhilarating race to just try to be always in front of the other opponent. And it's actually really exhilarating because if you're like, the rate that your enemy's life bar will decrease depends on how far away you are from them. So like if you're really far away from or really ahead of your opponent in the race, their life bar will drain like really fast. But the opposite is true. So yeah, so it's something you have to be aware of. And one interesting thing that I find in this game is that smacking into walls actually does not lower your health bar. So as I've described before, that weird hopping car thing, whatever, yeah, you can use that to your advantage in order to get the opponent, because it doesn't damage you and it allows you to go through these corners without losing a lot of speed, which is awesome. The thing is though, is that you gotta be careful though not to smack into points like this, because if you do, it's just basically like game over, because the enemy opponent will just zip like past you like super fast, and there's just basically no way at this point in order to catch up with your opponent cars. So you just gotta be careful not to smack into obstacles like this. I don't know what these are called, but I'm sure you guys can see what is it on the screen right now. But yeah, once you beat a rival, you are going to earn this game's currency, credit points. And these credit points can be used to do two things. One, you can buy a car, or two, you can upgrade the car that you currently have. And it makes this game have a lot of replay value because so it basically turns this game, not only is it a fighting racing game, but it's also kind of like a mini RPG as well, where you can basically fight as many rivals as many times as you can, so that you can earn enough credit points that you can upgrade your car. You can buy better cars so that you can face the stronger rivals, which is fun. I absolutely love that. And it's really exhilarating because, of course, when you start this game, your car is going to be like a decent kind of speed. It's not going to be too fast nor too slow, depending if you were lucky enough not to buy a clunker of a car in this game. But, you know, like basically when you get all these credit points and then you slowly build your way up to the faster cars, like the Porsche 911 and the Nissan Skyline R34, things like that. Wow, the speed that these cars can achieve is almost 200 miles per hour in this game, which really gives you a very good sense of speed, and it's very rewarding because, you know, like this game, because of its RPG elements, made you feel like you earned that speed, and it is so good because of that. I absolutely love the gameplay of this game. So what I've described before is basically the quest mode, where you can explore the Shuto Expressway in order to face a certain amount of rivals in basically for that day. There are actually a couple other modes that you can play in this game as well, and they're actually quite worth it, and I'll explain why is that in a second. So the second mode that you can do is the versus mode, where you can basically race against like another player, which is very awesome. The other mode is the practice mode, which I don't personally use very much, but it is where you can like refine like your racing skills and so on and so forth. But honestly, it's much more worth it just to refine them inside the quest mode. But there is one other mode that I absolutely would recommend that you have to play, especially after when you beat the quest mode of this game, and that is the quick race. You can kind of view this mode as kind of like an arcade mode, where, you know, like after you beat one rival, another rival will come in and race against you, and whatever health that you lose in the previous race will carry on to the next race that you go against with the other rivals. So it's very imperative that you don't lose any health when you're in this mode. So the way it works is basically the very first cars you're going to experience are very easy, but as it gets on, the rival cars that you experience get harder and harder until you face the ultimate Tokyo Extreme Racer. I'm not going to say who it is, but if you do manage to beat him, you will actually unlock his car, the Datsun 240Z, which is a really sweet car to have in this game. And it's actually, in my opinion, the best car to have. So yeah, that is why beating the quick race part of this game is very well worth your time. So I'm sure you guys can tell about how much I love the gameplay of this game. It is really a very unique racing game, and I absolutely enjoyed how Tokyo Extreme Racer plays and executes these unique racing styles in this game. I absolutely enjoy it. So of course, I'm going to give this game a 20 out of 20 in the gameplay section. So the next category that I'm going to be talking about is the graphics. Now, when you first buy this game, you'll notice that all over its packaging, it keeps listing 60 frames per second all over the place. Even on the game disc, it actually lists 60 frames per second. So you can obviously tell that the developers were very proud of achieving 60 frames per second on the Sega Dreamcast, and that is absolutely true. Whenever you play this game, it is indeed 60 frames per second, and on top of that, it does not have any hiccups or slowdowns at all. It is absolutely a smooth running game. It runs very well. The thing is though, is that I'm unfortunately not going to give a full score to this game in this section, because I think that the graphics and the texture models are certainly not the best looking there can be for the Sega Dreamcast. Because when you look at the textures, it can look a little bit pixelated and bleh in some areas. And on top of that, I think the polygon count on the car models is a little bit low, because the cars kind of look a little bit jaggedy in some areas. It just tends to look kind of weird. But I'm not going to give the developers too much flack for this, because this was a launch title for the Sega Dreamcast, and I'm sure, you know, like working with like new hardware, it's kind of a little bit difficult to be able to fully tap into the potential of a console when it first comes out. So, and I've actually seen much worse looking Dreamcast games than this game. So for that, I'm deciding that I'm not going to give Tokyo Xtreme Racer too high nor too low of a score. I think the best score that I should award Tokyo Xtreme Racer in the graphics department is a 17 out of 20. So the next category that I'm going to be talking about is art and presentation. Now, as I've already mentioned before in my Soul Calibur review, this does sound like something that would belong in the graphics department, but I'm here to tell you guys that it's not, because what I'm looking for in art and presentation is more like, you know, the art style, how does the fonts look, is everything very well organized, easy to read, things like that. And I'm here to tell you that Tokyo Xtreme Racer does pretty well in this category. You know, even though this is not the most amazing logo in the world, I still think the Tokyo Xtreme Racer logo looks pretty decent enough. I quite like it. The fonts and everything is very clear, easy to read. The menu is extremely easy to navigate. And also, you know, I kind of like the HUD, the green text that shows up as the HUD when you're actually playing the game. I actually think that's a very unique looking type of font. I actually quite like it a lot. And one more thing that I would like to praise about this game is that it has a very nice sense of style. I love the streaking lights that appear whenever you zip past them at very high speeds. It's very nice to look at. The only thing is that I think the coloration of the menu is kind of not that great looking, to be fair, because it's just like this boring, like black and grayish looking text with with white fonts to help like separate it from the background, but it just looks so subdued and drab looking whenever you look at it. I mean, I guess it's meant to focus on, like, you know, bring out the attention to the logo, and especially in the main menu and then the cars, but overall it just looks very okay-ish. So for that, I'm thinking about, I think, to be fair though, the presentation is still pretty good overall, as the, you know, like the menus are easy to organize, and at least the HUD of this game looks okay. So for that, I'm thinking about giving the presentation of this game an 18 out of 20. So with that out of the way, we're going to move on to the last category of this review, which is music and sound design. Now, I'm going to tell you guys straight up right away, this game is going to get a full 20 out of 20 in music and sound design, because I absolutely love the music in this game. It's very nice to listen to. I've actually been playing it through the entirety of this review, so if you like the music that's like been playing throughout this whole Tokyo Xtreme Racer review, you're gonna like the music that's in this game, because I think it's really good. It's very diverse, very fun, and there are some certain tracks that really are memorable and really like raises up the tension whenever you're racing against other players. It really works very well. I personally think that the sound effects in this game is pretty decent as well. You know, I think the cars sound, you know, like very good for what they are. They all have their own unique type of sounds, which makes me believe that basically the company that made this game actually took their time to actually go out to, like these cars in real life and get like sound clips from each one of them. So it makes all these cars that you play as sound very unique, which is a nice touch to this game. And I really enjoy that, of course. So, of course, for the music and sound design, as I've said it before, I think it is best to award it a 20 out of 20 for this game. So, now that we got the last category done, it's time to add up all the scores and see how well does Tokyo Xtreme Racer do. Which seal is it going to get? So, as we've mentioned before, the story of Tokyo Xtreme Racer is going to get a 12, the gameplay is going to get a 20, the graphics is going to get a 17, presentation is going to get an 18, and music and sound design is going to get a 20. When we add this up, it is going to get an 87% out of 100, which means that I'm going to be awarding this game, Tokyo Xtreme Racer, a silver seal of approval. As I mentioned before, I told you guys that I'm going to be a lot more critical in this review, and this is a shining example of that. Because even though that this game is part of my favorite racing game series of all time, that does not necessarily mean that I'm going to give it a golden seal of approval. This is because I'm trying to be as fair and as critical as I can whenever I do these reviews. It would be great if I could award every game, like a golden seal of approval. But of course, that's not fair, All these games have different levels, amounts of quality of how good they are to them. So yeah, so with by grading this game objectively, it is going to get a silver seal of approval, which is not too bad. It's still pretty far away from a bronze and a seal of disapproval, and it's just a few points away from getting a golden seal, so that's not too bad. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this review because I had a lot of fun time making and analyzing this video. Once I get done with reviewing all the launch Sega Dreamcast titles, boy, I cannot wait to go over the sequel to this game because I have a lot of fun with that one. And let's see how does that one fare to my rating system. Like, will it rate better than the original Tokyo Xtreme Racer? Well, I guess we're gonna have to see once we get to there. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this review as much as I enjoyed making it. This is the Sega Dreamcast. My name is Michael, and may the dream be with you.